would be the father of many children rather quickly, and that'd be a problem. Okay, so we need this virtue of chastity. Okay, and chastity governs attraction. It governs attraction, and that's kind of the experience that brings the virtue of chastity into play. Okay, now. Right. What is attraction? Attraction. Well, one thing to say about attraction is that it's something that happens to us. Right? We don't really say, I'm attracted to this. Right? It's more like it happens to me that I'm attracted to this. Right? That's kind of the passive nature of attraction. Okay? And chastity directs our attraction, at least in the human sphere, to the person. To the person. And not their sexual attribute. Right, this is chastity. Chastity. All right. Attraction, just on the level of attraction, can be of two types. It can be sensual or sentimental. Right? Sensual being bodily, sentimental being emotional. Right? Men are usually attracted on the sensual level, women more on the sentimental level, but obviously there's overlap in the experiences of both, for both genders. Okay? But chastity directs our attraction not to that particular trait of that person, whether it be their personality or their body, but to the person. Right? To the person. And this is because the law of this law is that you cannot use a person as a means to an end. Okay. Anyone know who came up with that first? This law. John Paul II calls it the personalistic norm. My mark is really dying. It was Immanuel Kant, philosopher. We cannot use a person as a means to an end. Okay, so if someone is attracted to another person, that's great, it happens. Without it, no one would be here. There'd be no one would ever fall in love, right? But unless that attraction gets to the level of the person and not just their attribute, then it will always fall short of love. Right? It will be using the other person. Right? So John Paul II goes on and on about the difference between using and loving. Right? And using is to violate this personalistic norm. We cannot use another person as a means to an end. Right? This person, even on the emotional level, this person makes me feel good, so I'm going to, be with them, use them for that end. Right? Because that's just their that one trait. Okay. Now, are attractions good or the evil? They're good. They're very good, right? Kierkegaard said, without sensuality, there would be no history. Without sensuality, there'd be no history. There'd be no people. There'd be no people to make history. Okay? So this is, and Kierkegaard was sort of Christian. He's a little kind of crazy, but right? They are good. John Paul II says attractions are the. He really says this: the stuff of love. The stuff of love. Meaning, love can build on attraction, and that's generally the way God has designed it to be. You're attracted, and then you're like you fall in love, and then you really learn to love another person. Okay. It can work the other way around. That first there's a friendship without attraction, let's say, or without romantic attraction, and then later on there is, I guess, a romantic attraction that doesn't have to start out with that. Can go either way. Now the problem with attraction is that we tend, when we experience an attraction, we tend to exaggerate. Actually, I think John Paul II says we always exaggerate the, what does he say? The value of it. Right? And this is what happens when people fall in love. Like, it's like the most amazing thing ever. Right? It's like it's not the most amazing thing ever, right? But they think it is. Okay? And this is why we have to be careful with attraction, because it's not love. Right? It's just the start of love. Okay? Again, this is another quote from C.S. Lewis. He's awesome. Okay? All right, C.S. Lewis wrote, "Being in love is a good thing," right? Or being attracted is a good thing, but is not the best thing. There are many things below it, but there are also things above it. You cannot make it the basis of a whole life. It is a noble feeling, but it is still a feeling. Who could bear to live in that excitement even for 5 years? And you'd probably be worn out or something, right? If you were just tremendously in love for 5 years, like you get tired of it. But of course, ceasing to be in love need not mean ceasing to love. Love in this second sense, love as distinct from being in love, is not merely a feeling. It is a deep unity maintained by the will and deliberately strengthened by habit, reinforced by, in Christian marriages, the grace which both parents ask and receive from God. They can have this love for each other even at those moments when they do not like each other. Okay. I'm told this is the reality of marriage. I'm not married. I'm told that there comes a point when you just don't like each other. and that's when you love. And that's pretty cool. I think that's cool. It's pretty heroic. Right. They can have this love for each other even at moments when they do not like each other. As you love yourself, even when you don't like yourself. Right. That's profound. They can retain this love even when each would easily, if they allowed themselves, be in love with someone else. Right? That would be very easy. It's easy to be in love. Being in love first moved them to promise fidelity. Right? God put a little trick on them. No, I fell in love. I'm going to get married. No, that's not how it is. But a little bit, maybe. Right? Being in love first moved them to promise fidelity. This quieter love enables them to keep the promise. It is on this love that the engine of marriage is run. Being in love was the explosion that started it. Okay? And I think we talked about promises last time. Right? There's a way to fulfill that first commandment. Right? And that's what spouses do at their wedding. Right? They promise a pretty amazing promise that you only do if you're crazy or in love. One or the other. Right? So, it'll be true to you in good times and bad, blah, blah, blah. Right? Just read those and don't get scared, right? You'll be scared. In a good way. In a good way. Okay. Only people in love make promises. Only people in love make promises. Okay. Now, all right. Any questions so far? We're still kind of on the verge of chastity. Sidestep to talk about a few other things. Okay. So, quote from I'm going to leave that up there. Okay. What? Let's see. Okay. Alright, we're not going to go with that. That's alright. The next thing to go over is the two ends of the marital act. I'm going a little out of order, but maybe I'll stick with chastity. I'll stick with chastity. I'll get to that at the end. Okay. Okay. Now, this is that fun part of the class where we get to go through the sins against chastity. But first, the important and humbling teaching that chastity requires self-mastery, which is a long and exacting work. Long and exacting work. One can never consider it acquired once and for all. It presupposes renewed effort at all stages of life. Okay? As C.S. Lewis mentioned, this is an unpopular virtue because it is a difficult virtue. It requires self-sacrifice. Right? It's not easy. Right? But there's a lot of help in the sacraments, especially in the sacrament of confession, right? To work at chastity. Now, here's the thing. Every Christian person is called to be chaste. It doesn't matter if you're married. You're still called to be chaste. If you're single, if you're celibate, right? If you're a widow, okay? Every person is called to this integration of the sexual urge. The human person must be directed towards love. Now, it looks a little different for different people depending on their state in life, right? But all the baptized are called to chastity, right? In keeping with their particular state in life. Okay, how do you sin against chastity? Okay, the Catechism lists first lust, right? The disordered desire or enjoyment of sexual pleasure. That's kind of a generic term. What does it mean? I mean, it says sexual pleasure is morally disordered when sought for itself, isolated from its procreative and unitive purposes. Okay, those are two important ones. All right, so any action that separates the procreative and unitive aspects of sex is going to be a sin against chastity. Okay? So, masturbation, right, understood to be the deliberate stimulation of the genital organs in order to derive sexual pleasure is a sin. Right? It's a sin against chastity. Right? The sexual urge, in order to be directed towards love, has to be directed outward. Right? And I think this is another C.S. Lewis quote. He talks about how it's more difficult for a man to love one woman than it is to love as many women as he makes up in his head, right? Meaning that the sins of masturbation are sins that prevent love from going outward. Right? It's a selfish, self-seeking act. Okay. Secondly, or thirdly, sin against chastity is fornication. Right? Sex before marriage. Okay. Well, that's a decent question. Why is that a sin? Why is that a sin? Take a guess. That's right. There has not yet been the pledge of one's life to another. Right? And in the sexual act, you're giving your body to another person. Right? And we have to ask ourselves, does it make sense to give away your body, to give away what is most precious to you, to give away yourself to someone who has not pledged their self to you? And so that's kind of the reason, right? It's kind of right. It's against our own dignity, right? As embodied persons, that we only give ourselves away to the one person who has promised himself to us. Okay. Now, it's not a sin to be, as Father Eric said in his homily today, it's not a sin to be pregnant, though. Okay? Even outside of wedlock, we have to be very clear, right, that God loves every child who's come into this world deeply. Okay. So fornication is a sin. It's not a sin to be pregnant. This is why the cost of sexual sin is always higher for the female. It's always much harder on them. Right? Because if they commit a sin against chastity, if they fornicate, guess what? They can become pregnant, and that's a lot of work. Your body changes a lot, right? Yeah, your whole life just changed, right? For the guy, well, maybe he could have fathered 15 children he doesn't even know. He has no idea, let's say. Right, so the cost for him is much lower. Okay? So this is why chastity is always a virtue that protects women. And that's why Christian cultures have always had great dignity and respect for both genders, especially for females. Okay? Other sins against chastity, in case you're wondering: pornography, prostitution, rape. Okay? Any questions? Okay. Don't worry, this is a great virtue. It's a joyful virtue. It's hard to grab. It's hard to we can never think we have it either. I think we have to work at it. But it's a great virtue that protects joy. Okay? Okay, now, chastity and homosexuality is the next and very delicate topic, which I hope to do justice to. All right, maybe briefly, I just need to read this in the Catechism so I don't mess it up. Homosexuality refers to relations between men or between women who experience an exclusive or predominant sexual attraction towards persons of the same sex. It has taken a great variety of forms through the centuries and in different cultures. Its psychological genesis remains largely unexplained, but basing itself on sacred scripture, which presents homosexual acts as acts of grave depravity, tradition has always declared that homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered. Right? They do not keep together the procreative and unitive aspects of the sexual act. right? Because it's not procreative. It can't be. Okay. They close the sexual act to the gift of life. All right, the Catechism goes on. It says the number of men and women who have deep-seated homosexual tendencies is not negligible. This inclination, which is objectively disordered, constitutes for most of them, a trial. And this is what Bishop Molina would always say, is that the Church, towards those with homosexual inclinations, with same-sex desire, must act as Simon of Cyrene did to Jesus. Right? Must help them carry the trial, carry that burden. Right? And just a brief word about this word disordered. Okay, it's kind of a scary word, and when it's read in the Catechism, it seems kind of, really serious. But just as same-sex desires are disordered, so are my desires to have like 10 Oreos, right? Or, a venial sin, right, is disordered, okay? So this word doesn't mean like that same-sex desires are like the worst of desires, or like the only bad desire the human person can have. Okay, there's a lot, right? And like you can't even describe all of them, right? But even something like small venial sins are quote unquote disordered. Okay, so I just want to include something on that word. All right, so those with same-sex desire are called to chastity, just as every human person is, right? And they are called to do this by the support of prayer and friendship, and they too can become saints. If you want to read more about this, there's a great book, Father Mike Schmidt's, Made for Love, Same-Sex Attraction in the Catholic Church. And he has a brother who is who's openly gay, and he talks about it a little bit in here. I don't know too much about the story, but this is a really, really great book. So this is the first time I've taught on the subject, so thank you for being patient with me. I may not cover all the nuances that need to be covered. But I think there's a question in the back.
I was going to ask, you kind of answered it by saying the name of that book, but like, if you had any specific advice on like how to make our friends who like have like same-sex attraction feel like welcome in the church, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I would first find out what their experience is of the church. Let them talk. What have you experienced in the church? And let them, make sure you know everything, at least as much as they'll tell you, about what they've experienced in the church. And then try to point them towards Father Mike Schmidt's, definitely. He's really the best on the topic. And then just tell them that they are welcome, of course. And when St. Paul makes his list of sins, and he talks about the sin of homosexual acts, well, guess what? It's one sin amongst a ton of sins, right? So it's not like this sin is the only one out there, right? The human person is not as we should be, okay? And some of us have more of a burden to carry than others. And those who have experienced same-sex desire have a greater burden to carry. Okay? All right. Now, moving on to the the love of husband and wife. We're going to finish with this. We're almost done. I have to just cover one last thing, because it would be bad if I missed it. And it has to do with, yes, the love of husband and wife. And the regulation of birth. Okay, regulation of birth. Right. The marriage is this place of love where the sexual act finds its home, if you will. Right? It is the institution that God has created, right, for the procreation of the species. Right? And the sexual act is ordered towards these two ends, right? Procreation of offspring and the union of husband and wife. Okay? And this is the amazing thing about human life and about parenthood, really, is that in the creation of a new person, right, husband and wife are co-creators with God. So at the moment that a child is conceived in the womb, God also creates a soul, right, a spiritual soul. And so there's this co-creation that takes place, and it took place the moment we were created, right? And you've probably seen those like YouTube videos of the sperm, like the strong sperm gets into the egg, right? And like at that moment, God creates a soul, right? And this is the fruitfulness of marriage, right? But why can't there be the use of contraception, right? Isn't it a burden to have children? Right? The church has taught that it's not permissible to space births by artificial means, right? By the pill. Why? Why not? Well, the act has to keep these two again together, right? And the contraception, right, closes off the possibility of procreation. And it's not as if God wants every single act between husband and wife to produce a child. It's not the case. There is such thing as responsible parenthood and the spacing of births. Right? But it must follow the natural laws built into our biology. Okay? And artificial contraception removes the possibility of procreation, or at least it tries to. It's not always perfect. It doesn't work sometimes. Okay, so yes, it's every action which, whether in anticipation of the conjugal act, or in its accomplishment, or in the development of its natural consequences, proposes, whether as an end or as a means to render procreation impossible, is intrinsically evil. It must be open to life, right? The sexual act. Okay. Now the last thing that I might just send you an article on is in vitro fertilization, because it's very, very common out there in the world this day, and I'm not going to do it justice right now. So I think I'll send you an article about it. Okay. So I hope that that this was clear. That let me just finish with this: that chastity is a positive, very positive virtue. It's going to help increase the joy and the pleasure of human life. Right? The Catechism says that between husband and wife, the sexual act is a source of joy. Right? It's a source of joy, so it's a very good gift from our Creator. And chastity is there to protect it and to bring it to its feelings fulfilled. Okay? All right. Any questions? Any last questions? Okay. Very good. That's it. One thing, for the catechumens, tonight when you're dismissed, you can go.